Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Quantum Guide Show. Well, today my guest needs no introduction, as many of you follow Ryan Patrick Burns on the Hero Paranormal channel on YouTube, Rumble, and many other platforms. Check out his links in the description. Ryan is one of the best and most thorough researchers into the paranormal realms, as well as the overlap within the social reality. Hang on to your hat as we travel deep into the construction of the EPSTEIN ENIGMA. So without further ado, we will bring Ryan on. Ryan, how you doing?
Hi, can you hear me? I can't seem to hear you, Karen.
Ah, shoot, you can't hear me. What about everybody out there? Are you folks able to hear me?
Yeah, I can't seem to hear you. Let me.
Can't hear me. Okay, hang on a second. Let's fiddle with this stupid thing and see what's going on.
I have to mess with my settings here.
Now what am I gonna do?
Let me
Can you
try
hear
some
me
different.
now?
It might be my earphones.
Okay, let's try something different. How about now? Can you hear me
I
now?
can hear you.
Okay,
Wonderful.
great. Now, can you just say a 1, 2, 3 so I can see if I can hear you now?
You bet. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, I'm having a little trouble hearing you, Ryan. You're kind of a little bit low.
1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
That's better.
Okay.
That's better. So you didn't hear my introduction of you. Basically, I told everybody that um, I didn't get into a lot about your background because I just sort of told everybody that you know about your channel and that you are a deep dive researcher into many things. Oh, Denise says better, so I'm guessing we can all hear each other now, so that's a good thing. Wow, so we got a big one to get into today, eh, Ryan? Before we get started, though, I'm just wondering if you want to tell anybody just a bit to get started about where they can find you and what you're best known for, at least in these circles.
Absolutely. Best known for probably owning a property that shares a fence line with the old Bigelow Ranch, known as spacewolfresearch.com, and probably best known for running the heroparanormal.com podcast. Just a small podcast I run whenever something of interest has my brain on pressure cooker mode. That allows me a little bit of a release to talk about those subjects. And you can get a hold of me also on social media. You can go to Hero Paranormal on Facebook and Instagram, or you can also go to Space Wolf Research on Facebook and Instagram, or just go to YouTube and look up Hero Paranormal. And yeah, any of those, and you can get a hold of me.
Wonderful. And all the links will be in the description below. I also want to say hi to Denise, our moderator here in the live chat. Thank you for being here, Denise. And also I saw Fearlessly Phoenixing earlier. I think she had to step out, but she might be back. And of course, other guests as they pop in, I'll acknowledge them. So, Ryan, I saw your podcast about how you framed the whole Mr. E. I don't even know if we can say this and stay on YouTube. So I'm going to call him Mr. E at this point. And I thought, my God, you're right on the money. It is a construction. It is a construction that's meant to keep our eyes focused on that and not on other things. Do you want to give us a little bit of a rundown on how you see it and let people know either what episode or what date to look up when they want to go over to your channel to watch the whole thing?
Yeah. And with Mr. E, and we know that Mr. E has a list, a client list that doesn't exist now. he is very much not a real person, in that, I mean, it's a real person playing the part or playing the character.
Yeah.
But what we stumbled onto with this whole ordeal of E Island, a place where Disney cruise ships would stop, this island that has a long history with Disney plays a role with Ghislaine Maxwell as well. She well, I guess that blew Mr. E, didn't it? She has a history with Disney as well. And what's interesting is when you realize that certain circles of society explore ways of how to get dirt on people and use that dirt against people for favors, which we're talking about high intelligence at this point, international variety. You realize strange connections, like that once you get the proof of it, it starts to make sense. So Ghislaine Maxwell is an heiress to the Maxwell family. Her father was a intelligence asset for Israel. Her father introduced her to Mr. E, this young version of himself, is what I like to think of him as. He seems like a just younger version of Mr. Maxwell, the entrepreneur. And you start to realize that these connections are not by mistake. These are not mistakes at all. Mr. E had that I know of, every job he ever had was given to him. He had money coming in to keep up this facade of what seemed to be the billionaire playboy. However, the problem with that is there wasn't enough money to keep up this facade at any given moment. The first shocking thing after this all transpired, when people went into okay, let's go in and get his funds, there wasn't that much in there. It was all locked up in trusts. In fact, there wasn't enough money in there to keep up with the regular maintenance for things like a jet, private island, a amazing Manhattan townhouse, and the list goes on and on. A ranch in New Mexico. He had properties everywhere you needed to have properties, and yet didn't have the money to keep these up. Where was that money coming from? Was it his money? We don't even know where his money was coming from, come to think of it. And when I first realized that he was a construct, there's a very amazing individual known as Eric Weinstein, who had the opportunity to meet with Epstein. And when he met him, and we're talking about high functioning IQ, mathematics, a guy that thinks way higher than my pay grade. And he immediately recognized that there was too much going on. There was too much to this individual for him to be real. And what I mean is, he was a construct. He's a construct that was put into place by probably a bunch of political intelligence structures. Oh,
Yeah.
and I think the Epstein. I have quite a few Epsteins. About a month ago, I went down the rabbit hole again. But there's the Epstein video you've never seen is one of them on Hero Paranormal on YouTube. The other one was Epstein and the Secret Space Program, and there's quite a few more. But yeah, those were about a month ago on Hero Paranormal on YouTube.
Mm-hmm. Now, Ryan, you sent me a clip, which was aerial drone footage of I believe, his property on the island. And it shows, it's pretty compelling. This was taken after his so-called demise. And it's pretty compelling that the actual man behind the construct is still alive. And I put the link to that in the description notes below. I tried to get a copy of it to show during this show, but it didn't happen. I'm having technical issues. I recently upgraded to Windows 11 and now nothing seems to work anymore. And I'm regretting that, but that's another story. So that link is in the description below if you folks want to have a look. And of those of you who are listening on audio, come on over and watch the video. And the link to this extra bit is actually in all the notes for all the platforms. So I hope you all can have a look at that. But I saw another video very recently. We can get into this in a little bit more depth later on in the show today, Ryan, where they were saying that the reason behind the construct was to keep everybody emotionally involved in that particular story and to keep our eyes off a much larger story that's also coming down and happening at this time. And I thought I sent you a link to it. I don't know if you had time to watch it, but it was very compelling. And I agree with that too. But pretty much what they said in that video, you have said on your podcast. And I think you're right on the money. So I'm not saying that these horrible things with underaged females, I'm not saying it doesn't happen. But what I'm saying is that this has been constructed and blown up over time to cover up a whole bunch of other things. And I've followed quite a bit of the evidence, and I think personally he's a bit of a cover or a front for money laundering. Seems to be because nobody's going to hire him for tax advice. It's ridiculous. I mean, you'd have to be stupid to believe that. You would go to a tax person. You would go to someone who specializes in that. You wouldn't ask some guy who shows up at parties about that. That doesn't make any sense to me. But the money laundering, which we're seeing happen all over the world, and these people who I call them the parasite class. I will not call them elites. There's nothing elite about them, but everything they have stolen from humanity. And that's why I call them the parasite class. And they're constantly finding ways. They don't have to follow national rules or pay taxes or do any of the things that they all expect us to do. And so that sort of was my leaning. So I'm not saying, I mean, my knee-jerk reaction, of course, is to get really upset about the exploitation of children. Let's face it. And there probably, and I'm pretty convinced there is a whole way too much of that. Well, way too much. It's all too much of that going on. But I don't think that's the claim to fame for the construct. I think the construct has been carefully constructed in such a way as to keep our focus wherever the powers that be want our focus to be. And that's what I think. So I totally agree with you, Ryan. I'd love to hear more about your observations.
It's such a muddled web of misrepresentation with Epstein, and that's why I think he's a construct. He's playing a role. It's literally, live action role play.
Mm-hmm.
He had a part to. That was his job. When people say they can't find any qualified trades to his hedge fund, it's because he wasn't making any. He wasn't a hedge fund manager in any way, shape, or form. His job was to play one in the world stage. And he played one very well with the jet, the houses, the girls, and, doing the philanthropical things too, which were bogus. He had a secret science honeypot as well. He would fund and go to these venues where he was the philanthropist, quote unquote, funding science. And I mean, we're talking about serious philanthropy. And he's even been on articles about it. And in his estimation, he basically said that his exact quotes were, I'm a pretty good mathematician. He was kind of a boastful guy. And he said that he was eager in funding science that the Trump administration had cut back on. But what we find is that, and I don't want to get political because this is not political at all.
Mm-hmm.
This honeypot didn't care what side of the aisle you were on. He cared about getting in the right circles, whether that be giving 9 and 10 figure gifts to science, gift money he doesn't have, which again, back to where is this coming from? Acting like a super wealthy individual. And he would choose who to fund. And he said that he was looking for people that were doing things like building laboratories, fringe science, big institutions. He had, of course, as we know, Stephen Hawking out to the island. I mean, absolutely ridiculous, self-perpetuating, scientific, what they called it was a scientific priesthood. He was playing the part of an intelligent guy involved with science. Hey, I'm the type of guy that you guys want to talk with. I'm the kind of guy you want to know. Get me in the circles with other people. And I believe this was all to lure people, much like a Venus flytrap, into the honeypot.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I would agree with you on that one. And so that's another way that they were able to control people. So they would lure them into these compromising situations, film them, record them, whatever. Then they've got something to hang over them. So I think, yeah, that might have been like one of his jobs. And like you said, his whole persona was constructed to make him look like he was a man of the world and, a jet setter and with all these high profile people, and he's friends with them all and everything. And now I do believe that as a man, he had some problems. Probably sex addiction was one of them, and some other things. But today we're dealing more with the construct. So I agree. I think his role was constructed, and that would also explain why they're not doing an in-depth investigation into him, because he's not a real thing. Now, as far as him going to prison and getting unalived, I also think that was a construct. What's interesting is what you used to be able to find in videos, you can't find anymore. And there was a lot of evidence that came out around the time he unalived himself that said that it was somebody else took his place, and that the way his neck was broken, he couldn't have done that to himself. But then there was footage showing up, like the clip that you sent me, and I've got that in the description below, of him actually being spotted, and he is definitely moving around and conscious. So I'm wondering, Ryan, if there isn't perhaps a private island or who knows what, where these people go when their construct is no longer needed, and then they can live out the rest of their lives having all their whims satisfied and be taken care of as part of their contract for doing the job that they're doing. But the amount of frenzy whipped up around this man and the construct of this man and how it's been ongoing year after year after year says to me that might well be something that's being used to just seriously distract us, because not too much gets people whipped up like any kind of talk about Mr. E. What's your thought on that, Ryan?
Everything. Oh my gosh. It is okay. everything about it. As far as the death, missing footage, really. I mean, when that came out, I think everybody knew, that this is a controlled narrative. There's missing footage. That's probably because the person that escorted him out of the cell brought him a cell phone and a lobster bisque for lunch. And there's footage. Then there's no footage of inside the cell. And then we find, and I have it if you'd like it, there's footage, the same footage that Dan Bongino and Kash Patel alleged to have seen of him hanging himself or choking himself out in the cell. There's that footage, which matches the cell perfectly. It's not very good footage, and but it shows him doing it. And what's interesting is when you see this, you just know that this is it doesn't look right.
Yeah.
Everything looks staged. Now, the person, the pathologist, Michael Baden, who did the autopsy, this is just as much smoke and mirrors as anything. This is the same guy that was involved in the investigations of John F. Kennedy, the same guy that did testimony in the O.J. Simpson murders, the same guy that did investigations into the deaths of John Belushi, the murder of George Floyd. High profile. We're talking about anything high profile. If you need a name, I'm in the game. That's the pathologist. So interestingly, these notable cases, when I see these things and when I see missing footage, when I see, all these telltale signs, the money's gone. When I see that there's no money there, that, the brother alleges that obviously when he lost in court, because he's already, these poor victims need their payout, and they went to divvy up the money, they found out that there was very little money. It was all tied up in trusts, and there was no way to really get it. Now, keep in mind that some of these victims like Virginia Giuffre, they ended up passing, and they had some of the wildest stories that I've seen. They had stories of everybody and their dog at the island doing unthinkable things, but nobody's paying attention to those stories. They're only sticking to the script. They don't want to talk about the arrogant and high-level individuals, both celebrities and political, that were drunk on power, slinking into cabanas with kids, basically. Nobody wants to talk about that. All they want to talk about is Epstein. It's all about Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. Nobody else is involved. There is no list. First there was a list, then there isn't a list, then there is a file, then there's not a file, and it's smoke and mirrors. And I think that leads us to where this is ultimately headed, which is UFOs and possibly, potentially, the disclosure of UFOs by the current administration.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So this actually, my mind is free. I can go almost anywhere. I can see this whole Epstein construct being valuable for keeping us so that we're divided and that we're not focused on what's really going on. I can see this as being a tool, really, for us to be pushed into different belief systems and conflicts and conspiracies. But there's even shades of flat earth theory in this, that maybe there's another piece of land that we don't even know exists, or continents where people live. That came out during Ghislaine Maxwell's testimony when they were when she was the court case was charging her with all her different things that she was doing in conjunction with Mr. E. And she kept saying that she was from a land that I had never heard of. So that overlaps with that. She also was a submarine pilot. And all this other stuff seems to fit into that whole genre of the conspiracy. Then we get all this honeypot stuff, and we can see how that all fits. Then we see all the money laundering techniques that they would need a front man for. As you mentioned, the coroner is shady beyond belief and is always being used, the same guy, for all these different um, so-called unalivings and self-unalivings and things like that. It just seems to go on and on and on everywhere. But what I found really interesting, what some people are saying now, is like what you just said, Brian. There's something much bigger coming that we don't expect, and it's to keep us completely off our guard and not seeing what's happening. So there are, I think, many constructs. Mr. E is one of many constructs. What are they actually trying to hide from us? And I did a show recently about cycles of time, where it seems like every 400 or 500 years, there's a huge natural disaster, what we would call a natural disaster, a comet, or tidal waves, or the sun going into a mini nova, or God knows what, all these things. It seems like at the same time there's a reset. So I always point people towards a channel called My Lunch Break. I don't know if you've seen any of his videos, Ryan, but it's pretty compelling what he's saying. So we know, those of us who are no stranger to the conspiratorium, we have known that there has been all kinds of evidence that says that maybe humans are not even, maybe some of them were put in a ruling position to temporarily run things while the true overlords were, for whatever reason, unavailable, and they're coming back. And wouldn't that just shake everybody up? So all these other things are keeping us from going in that direction, because first of all, most people would think that's ridiculous, but also uh, I don't know. I've always felt they're coming back, and there is a reckoning. Let's just put it that way.
Or possibly more frightened, they've always been here. And the reason I bring that up is because let's take a look at Epstein Island. What was the focal point? It's not the beautiful mansion or the grounds that are perfectly kept, maintenance costs that he couldn't afford. It's none of this. The focal point of the island is a temple with a golden dome and an owl at the top of it. And this is, again, alluding to the secret mystery religions of the elite. We're doing stuff here that you don't know about. And interestingly, when it hit the fan, when he really got charged, and he was not on the island, the dome and the owl disappeared. So that means the focal point of the island disappeared. Who knows where it was taken? If we find that owl and if we find that golden dome, I can tell you that's where the rituals are now taking place. And I recently came across, this is absolutely wild, a story of a model, and she wasn't the prettiest model, wasn't the youngest model. She didn't have what it takes, let's say. But she joined the club, so to speak. She would go to these elite parties. And she said at first they were strange, they were weird. Mm-hmm. Then they got stranger and weirder. They started to be held in bigger and bigger homes, and pretty soon they were mansions and castles. And then it got to a point where she was seeing the same individuals showing up with bodies. She didn't know if these people were drugged or alive. In one instance, she saw a larger kind of fat man, a grotesque man in underwear, come in with a girl on his shoulder and throw her down and put her on a spinning table and barely slit her wrists and spin the table, and the blood was coming off. And all the people were, ha, 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 drinking of the blood, and then he put her back on his shoulder and left. And then at another party, I believe this one was in Paris, she went in and she saw that same guy coming in with another girl. And this time she started seeing people literally eat the girl. And she didn't know, like, is this person alive? Are they dead? Is it just a dummy? She didn't care. She just said, you know what, I'm out. And the reality is, the further up the food chain, technically the food chain, as you alluded to, that at the top, there's non-human representation. The further up this food chain of the elites you go, the closer in proximity you're going to get to these things where rules no longer exist. And that is what they flaunt in our faces is, come to my private island, come to my castle, come. Rules exist out there, but not here, because we are above the law. And that's exactly what Epstein represented. Mm-hmm. And I think it was there to shock heads of state. I mean, who has parties with Bill Clinton? Who has parties with all kinds of people that are heads of state? This is a guy that has artwork. He has oil on canvas of Barack Obama with 6 fingers, alluding to Nephilim magic. He has oil on canvas in his private collection of Bill Clinton wearing the blue dress, basically making fun of the most powerful people on the planet because he's in a position that is above the law. So when I hear that, oh yeah, he died in his jail cell, there was no footage, then there is footage, then there's missing footage from the outside, then there's, when you get this song and dance and smoke and mirrors, no, I buy it for what it is. He was above the law. He was always above the law. He continues to be above the law. And now there is surely somebody else above the law in his position, playing the same role, possibly somewhere else.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would have to agree with you. You want to know what it reminds me of? You know, I don't know if I have the right story or not, but when I was a kid, I learned about the story of Hansel and Gretel, and they go off into the woods and they see this wonderful house made of all candy and cookies, and these are poor children who basically were on their own because they were poor and they were very hungry, and they went and they started eating and eating from this house, and eventually the witch captures them and she plans to eat them. That does not sound that different from some of these parties where people go and they get contracts, and if they're in, they get asked, are you in or are you out? And if you're in, then you get like that model, you get modeling contracts, and you get all kinds of things, and you get wealth, and you get to belong to the in group, and but beware, because the witch is going to eat you for breakfast. So it just really reminds me of that. So all the things that are dazzling to our eyes, things that none of us in the normal reality would have a chance to experience, and then people are invited and they don't think straight. It's like they're drunk with the anticipation of what they're going to get without realizing how evil and how horrible it actually is. So I also believe that everything we've been taught, Ryan, is a lie. History is a lie. How to be healthy is a lie. How to make money is a lie. Everything is just a big fat lie. And when we start finding out, we go through the awakening process. It's very disturbing. But can you imagine how upset everybody would be if we suddenly found out that there are beings, whether they're transdimensional or extraterrestrial beings, that are on their way back, or maybe up to the surface? God only knows. There's many different ways, right? And that we're basically bugs, like when you go in the backyard and you see the ants running around in an anthill, and that's all we really are to them. Yeah, that would probably cause mass chaos and mass panic, and people would long for the days when they believed that humans were somehow rulers on this planet. And I don't think all the ET forces are good, even though I have had positive experiences I think there's something really big that's going to knock everybody's socks off when they find out. And in the meantime, they'll just keep us all busy and investigating this and spreading rumors and trying to figure stuff out. I don't know. That's my take, Ryan.
Your take is dead on. There are forces, unseen forces, for good and negative, and a gray area in between, that have always been in touch with humanity. Humanity has always made excuses for what these are, or tried to compartmentalize them and call them something. If you were in Europe, this was the fairy folk. If you were in Greece, this was the gods on Mount Olympus. If all depending on the culture you're in, you have this semantic word to describe it, and in modern times that word is aliens. I hate the word, but it's a great word, because it's not us. That's what matters. It's not us, and that's why the capstone on the pyramid is floating, because all the bottom levels are us, and then when you get up towards the top, it's not us, and there's a separation. And, I'm currently working on a cattle mutilation case that's going to go national news, I think, very, very quickly. I would say within the next month, maybe sooner. And it's funny, because I'll have these amazing conversations with people like Linda Moulton-Howe, or journalists, or even pathologists or cattle investigators, and it always kind of ends up in the same place. Well, what is it, and why are they doing it? And I think the important thing to remember is it's not us. So it's difficult to understand why these things are happening. Why are they doing it? Again, it's not us. Their reasons could be as simple as because they can, because they always have, or it could be something very simple, it could have nothing to do with what we see. And it's when you are dealing with non-human intelligence, whether those be positive or negative, they are working on a different timeline. They're working from a different perspective to our reality than ours. And asking the question, why are they doing it, is sort of like, well, they always have, always will. And as you said, it just really bugs with this cattle mutilation case. What I'm finding out is, I believe this by September 1st, which is very soon, the FBI is going to come in and analyze this. And I realized, like, nowadays in the times of Doge, we don't have a lot of money floating around in the government. For them to put everything down, send agents out to the middle of nowhere, Utah, to investigate a dead cow, tells me that they don't even know what's going on. And this is spooky, but they do know that it's always been happening. And I was told there's nothing they can do about it.
I also wonder if the reason they chose the name non-human intelligence is because it is beings who are not human, who have lived on the earth for thousands and thousands of years, has nothing to do with our idea of ET. And ETs may also exist, and interdimensional and transdimensionals might also exist. There's a lot going on. We're so limited in the color spectrum, the light spectrum that we can see, the sound spectrum that we can hear. There could be a whole lot going on that we don't know anything about, but it occurred to me that maybe they chose the term non-human intelligence because it describes it, and people will automatically think ET, when really it's, I'm not sure what the word is. Is it not cryptozoology? I don't know if you know the word.
Cryptoterrestrial, yeah.
Cryptoterrestrials, yeah. I just want to say a quick hello to Tennessee, Kentucky Bigfoot. Thank you for joining us. Jim and Matt are going to join us on Sunday for the Aliens and Angels podcast. I hope y'all come back and see my interesting visit with them coming up. I want to say hi to Max, of course, fearlessly phoenixing. If I missed anybody, I do apologize. Thank you for joining us. So I'm sorry, I kind of cut you off there, Ryan. What do you think about them terming it non-human intelligence? What do you think that might mean?
You know, they're always changing the wording. It's a lot like, the government used to call it, first it was remote viewing. Now it was ESP. I apologize. They have all these different terms, whether it's something positive or something negative, and you have to constantly change the name of it to keep it fresh and act as if it's something new when there's nothing new under the sun. There's
Mm-hmm.
always been divination. There's always been psionics, which is that alleged calling down of UFOs, and they weren't always gray aliens. But if you look back in biblical artwork, there they are in the sky. And I was talking with a lady out at Contact in the Desert. Her name is Susan, and she has one of the most amazing cases where this was way back in the 70s, and her and a friend, it was Karen and Susan, were driving across the country, and they had a case where they were driving along, and then all of a sudden the stars disappeared. It was at night. All they could see was the roadway. And then pretty soon they came upon a bunch of massive jackrabbits in the road blocking their way. And they'd never seen jackrabbits this big, this tall. So obviously they want to look at this. And needless to say, those jackrabbits then turn into gray aliens. And it just goes to prove that whatever this non human intelligence is, it can put what they call screen memories on us. In other
Yes.
words, it's playing the same game as Epstein. It's all a facade. And I like to think of it as I think the best example I have when people ask me that question, why is this non-human intelligence doing this? I like to give the answer, which isn't a direct answer, but I like to give the answer of a fisherman in a boat throwing out a fly, and the fish eats the fly. That's the contact. Then
Mm-hmm.
all of a sudden, the fish is removed from its regular stomping grounds and put in the boat. That's the craft. Usually, if the fisherman's any good, he'll pump the fish's stomach either from the mouth or from behind. That's the surgery to find out what it's eating. And
Mm-hmm.
then it will release the fish back into the water, and the fish will meet up with the other fish and tell this amazing story of abduction and surgery and being re-implanted in this reality. Just fascinating story, and that there's hundreds of other fish that this has happened to, but nobody believes. And the fish are trying to figure out why this all happened with all these gruesome, gory details and big theories. And the reality is, the fisherman's he's just trying to waste an hour or two out on the water. It has nothing to do with what the fish thinks it has to do with,
Mm-hmm.
because the fish is seeing it from a different perspective. And I think we may be dealing with something like that when it comes to this non-human intelligence. But Epstein was taking a page right out of this book of screen memories, smoke and mirrors, this huge facade with mansions and ranches and private islands and money and excess and girls everywhere. They're all underage, which is right against the law. And the reality is, it was all a big facade. He was just
Mm-hmm.
playing a part to get that contact, to get to get people to join the club. And more power is involved the more people you have in the club, much like any pyramid organization.
Mm-hmm. I agree. So basically, he did serve different purposes, the man, but more he was a construct that was the lure that lured people in, got them connected, and he, um, then even in his so-called unaliving, which I actually don't believe he was unalived. They say Epstein didn't Epstein himself. I kind of agree with that. And it just keeps going on and on and on because people, I'm in Canada, but from what I understand, people in the States are really upset that they were promised the files, they were promised a nice, clean, surgical excisement of what this was all about so everybody could understand it. And now the water is just muddy, muddy, muddy all the time, keeps us all confused, keeps us all worrying, keeps us all kind of messed up in our heads. So I think where I want to go from here, oh, Denise, I think you're right on the money. She says it's a big Ponzi scam. Oh, yeah, absolutely that as well. And so the construct has been used, and I find that every time something comes out that's sensationalism, I'm curious for a while, but then I kind of get a kind of burnout where I'm just not interested anymore because it's just taking too long and it doesn't make any sense. I'm kind of at that point by the time I saw your podcast where you were talking about him being a construct. There's another element here, and that is there might be some really bad people doing some really bad things and they're under investigation. And you brought that out on your podcast. They can't say anything because they have to go through the due process and round these people up and charge them. And I think we might see some of that. What's your thought on that, Ryan?
Yeah, I think if they are of no value to the big display anymore, we will see that happen. Much like the Diddy parties, um, when you're no longer of value to the big display, we're talking, and Diddy plays into this because, again, I think that this was a way to distract from the Epstein deal. Everybody
Yep.
wanted their Epstein stuff. And then it's like, oh no, don't look at Epstein. Look at this other guy. We got the same thing going on over here. It's always distraction, distraction. It's a psychological operation. And if you are of no value to the big display, then these things can happen to you. And yes, you 100% will be found guilty, depending on your value to the machine. And I've always, thought that things were one way. And sadly, when you discover that they're not, you start to realize, as I believe I have realized, and a lot of people aren't going to like this, is I sometimes talk politics, but I'm apolitical because I believe that it's a monolithic control structure over our reality. And it has been probably for the last maybe 3,000 years that I know of, maybe more. And the reason I say that is there's a reason why all the elites are interbreeding among themselves, because they don't want to be associated with the commoners. There's a reason why it doesn't matter which presidential candidate you're voting for. If they walked into a restaurant, they rather sit at the same table with each other than us. And it's because they understand this apparent agreement or understanding that it's about control. And if there is a monolithic control structure, then you need a big display. You need these celebrities, people that are celebrated, pawns in the game. It very much is a Game of Thrones. And you need to be able to, every once in a while, have one of them take a fall. It's like a show, it's entertainment. And I believe that the puppet masters are essentially not human. And that sounds very David Icke and very crazy. And I know it sounds far-fetched, but you don't have to look at it that way. You could go to church every Sunday and they'll tell you the same thing. It's understated in our reality that we now believe and look to science to answer all our questions. The only problem is, as science has gone quantum, we're realizing that we're back at square one and that we're really dealing with things that are in control, that there's no explanation for how they react and how they're observed by humanity. We're really dealing with non-human intelligence.
Yep, I would agree with you. And it's interesting too how, I don't know, when you just put the blocks together, I don't claim to have any kind of insider information or special knowledge or anything like that. But when you put it kind of like the puzzle pieces and you start to put them together, it would not surprise me that there's something really big coming. And then, of course, they have this Oumuamua type so-called mothership headed towards Earth. I personally don't believe in that, because any beings that can travel interstellar, they would use transdimensional medium for travel. They're not going to be rowing their boat across vast distances. Plus, we know that the fake alien invasion is coming, but there could quite well be beings that live on this planet that we know nothing about, that have wanted to be hidden or kept hidden. And when that comes out, that's going to blow a lot of people's minds. So I think we've well established that Mr. E is a construct. He may be a real person who did some dirty, rotten scoundrel things. I personally don't believe he was unalived. I think there was a substitute, much the way there have been for some of the other people that have been taken out. And but the construct will serve as long as we allow it to serve, and then they'll switch to something different again to keep us off of our I don't know, out of our power, I guess. So I think it might be good for us to turn the conversation a little bit towards what can we do. For instance, in my own life, I believe it's really important for me to use a fair amount of self-discipline, to eat properly, to get enough sleep, to get some exercise, to have positive contacts with other people, all the things I need to remain intact so that I can weather the storms that keep coming. Plus, I'm at the point now where I'm pretty much disengaged from being riled up over politics. I think the left and the right are two wings of the same bird. I think that there's a whole lot going on that no matter how I rack my puny brain, I'll never really understand it. Who knows what's real and what's not real anymore? And the whole thing is very, very crazy making. So for myself, what I'm trying to do is keep myself intact, as informed as possible, and not, if it comes out on mainstream media or even alt media and it's something that gets me all riled up, maybe I need to take a look at that and ask what's the purpose of that. What do you have to say to people listening and watching this show, Ryan?
Such a great point, because that is the answer. And everybody that wants disclosure of what's really going on, whether it's Epstein or UFOs. And I really enjoyed what you sent me with Stephen Bassett and Alan Steinfeld. I had a good conversation with Alan out at Contact in the Desert. Wonderful man. But what was covered there is 100% true. And that is, these things are all distractions, and that this UFO disclosure may be used to distract from the Epstein list, and vice versa.
Mhm.
Other than nuclear war, you've got to keep the people entertained and distracted, because the last thing you want them to do is attack the monolithic control system, which is impossible at this point to change anyway. So the reality is, we are disclosure, Karen. We are the disclosure. We are talking about this big display, the big false reality, the reality that we are the change. We are what needs to happen. And there are people that will not understand this unless, as was discussed in that wonderful segment, unless the President of the United States says, aliens are real, or non-human intelligence is real, and it's here, or it's coming, or it always has been here, but these are real. And then, wow, everybody just has their minds blown, when in reality, the audience, meaning the citizenry, everybody should know this already, because it's been done before. Don't wait for them to disclose to you what you already know and then be shocked when you hear it and go into a state of panic. Because we already know, anybody in the know knows, that there is, in fact, other entities that are not human in nature. And That's all they're saying. They're just saying, hey, guess what? There's an intelligence out there that is not human. But if the right person says it, everybody just loses their mind. They're completely distracted. It'll keep the mainstream media going for months, if not years. And the reality is, Karen, we are the disclosure. Humanity is the disclosure. We just have to come to terms with that ourselves. And then it doesn't matter what they say on TV because it doesn't matter.
Yep, absolutely, I agree. So, yeah, so I think that keeping ourselves intact, keeping ourselves connected, and letting our well, I rely a lot on my gut instinct, which tells me what might be true and what might not. Not that I get it always right or anything like that. But I think that regardless of what comes out, and let's face it, every week there is probably 1,000 YouTube videos or Rumble videos that come out that could get us, shake us up and make us lose our focus and make us get all upset and, angry and taking sides. And I think it's a big chore just to, like I keep saying, remain intact. I think it's so important. And then be aware so that as the stuff comes out, I don't know. I just think we've been lied to so much that I don't believe anything anymore. I just don't. What's important for me is being a good person, being kind to my pets, being kind to my grown children, being kind to my neighbors, being a decent human being. Um, because nobody knows how long they're for that they'll be alive in this world. And I don't think this is the only reality either. It's just, I think, the tip of the iceberg. But that's another discussion. Ryan, we're almost out of time. I'd love it if you could share again about your podcast. So you've got something to do with cattle mutilations coming up very soon. You've also recently captured some footage of some kind of strange cryptid on your property. I'd love to have you back to talk about that because I think there's all kinds of animals or things that we don't even know about that add, I don't know, spice to the story of being alive here on Earth today. But let's why don't you tell us a bit more about what you've got coming up and it's interesting, cattle mutilations again back in the news.
It is wild. Yeah, this is probably one of the strangest cases I've ever come across. And just in my neck of the woods, in my short history researching this, I've seen quite a few. And this one is bar none. It has every trait that you would expect from the classic cattle mutilation, plus some that are just out of this world. And that's what you get when you look into these things, is you realize that there's more to us. And it's funny that we chose this topic because the mystery religion of the elites is really no mystery. Like, if you look at all these like secret society books, they're all basically alluding to the same thing as like this not so secret society book. And that is the fact that, guess what? There's something else out there. And it doesn't matter what you call it. It doesn't matter, how you want to describe it. The reality is the only way to implement or make a change for the positivity and the good of yourself, those you love, and the planet is to do exactly what you said. And I think that's what we need to concentrate on. We need to rely on powers that are greater than ourselves and try to mimic what we want to see in our world. And that is what will happen. And it's just as easy, if not easier, to be a good person than it is to be a bad one. So a lot less drama for sure. But yeah, keep in tune with anything Hero Paranormal on YouTube, and I'll do my best to keep that coming and keep everybody notified about this strange cattle mutilation, strange cryptids. And I just came across some game camera footage yesterday of law enforcement, which had captured literally a skinwalker, and they don't want this out. Shocker. They don't want this out. And it's the closest thing I've ever seen to my initial late 90s experience, where I had literally a skinwalker or a hitchhiker come into my truck. It looks the closest to anything I've ever seen to what I experienced. And they don't want this footage out because, I don't know, they don't want it out. But there are things out there, good, bad, and indifferent, that are not us. So pick a side. And hopefully, a lot of folks, I think, right now are riding the fence. No, pick a side. Don't ride the fence.
Yep.
You know what they say, the devil owns the fence.
Yep. I agree. You kind of got to go one way or you got to go the other. I want to thank everybody who's in the live chat today. It's been very lively, lots of comments. Thank you so very much. I want to thank those of you who are listening on an audio platform. Please, if you are so inclined, give me some stars. And of course, those who are watching the replay, I've really appreciated having you all join us. Ryan, maybe you could just, for those that are on audio, just say where people can find you before we go.
You bet. You can find me at Hero Paranormal on YouTube. HeroParanormal.com will take you to my Patreon page, and you can also keep up with all the fun experiments we're doing, researching non-human intelligence with advanced working groups up in the Uinta Basin. You can check that at spacewolfresearch.com or Spacewolf Research on social media.
Wonderful. And I'm just wondering if you want to do a quick plug for your bronzer that your wife created.
Oh, this stuff is
because
great.
Your
Okay.
skin looks amazing and you're out in the desert all day, every day. So I thought maybe you want to do a quick plug for that.
Sure. Yeah, it's not me. It's my amazing wife. She created this moisturizer and bronzer called Spice Natural Bronze. All the best ingredients. She formulated it all in-house. If you go to happinessmedical.com, you can buy it there. It takes you to the small eBay store. Or if you go to heroparanormal.com and jot over to the store, you can get it there. We've got that. We have soap and stuff that just kind of helps the podcast keep going. But yeah, great product. It would be me literally bottling it up, packaging it, and sending it to you with a thank you card. But it's great. I don't know what or how she made it, but it keeps my skin looking amazing, and it's a good thing because I abuse the heck out of my skin. And
awesome.
It's a great product. Thank you, Karen.
Yeah, it must be. And thank you for sharing that. So thank you, Ryan, for coming on the show today and helping to explain the Mr. E construct and Enigma, because it's confusing to a lot of people. I want to thank everybody for joining us. And I hope you all come back on Sunday for Tennessee, Kentucky Bigfoot. We're going to talk all things Bigfoot and Sasquatch. So that's it for today. And thank you, everybody. And we'll hope you have a wonderful week. Bye-bye now. Thank you for joining me for the Quantum Guide Show. Become the change that you wish to see in the world. Subscribe to my YouTube and other channels at Karen Holton TV. Click the like button, leave me a comment, and share this podcast with your friends. Read about my true life ET contact in my book called Transdimensional: Meet the New Neighbors, which is now available in Amazon bookstores worldwide. Check out my website at www.KarenHoltonHealthCoach.com to see my free resources and amazing products and services. All the links will be in the description below. As part of the Forbidden Knowledge Network, you will find the Quantum Guide Show with Karen Holton and also the Aliens and Angels podcast on all audio platforms. Until next time, keep up the good work.